Hey, I'm Coach T. This is week 40 of my 1 year long journey into learning C Sharp, and for the last couple of months, really studying Unity to build some stuff that I'm having fun with. This was a big week. I'm not gonna bury the lead here. I'm gonna go and show you the progress on the game project, and then I'm gonna talk about how I was able to implement coding in a totally new language at work. That was pretty exciting. So let's just take a look. I know last week, I had a lot of stuff come together, but because of work circumstances and because I was up at like 5 o'clock and working until about 6:30 a.m. every morning this week, and then also working real late, like until midnight on a couple of nights, I made a lot of progress. So here's what we got going on. I'm gonna really quickly flip over. There we go. You know what? I don't even think you need to see me. So I have really gotten comfortable with the Unity interface over the last couple of days, particularly using scriptable objects, composing new behaviors. Let's turn the UI off. Let's get out of here. And I have gotten pretty comfortable using nav mesh agents. And why are you guys so high up? That's weird. You can see I'm using draw gizmos, and I'm starting to compile a level that is it is playable. It has a win condition. I've got HUDs now. I've got intelligent enemies that seek, shoot, pursue with a better version of the state machine from last week. I have an exit point. So I'm going to just play it. We'll take a look at what it looks like together. I do have, oh, you know what I should do is pause it. Let's go to maximized. All right. So right now you can see the gate is not here, so nothing happens. These are ammo pickups. So let's see, if I shoot, get rid of that guy. All right, I don't have death animations, obviously. I have a HUD down here in the bottom right. It's not my final HUD, it's just one that I threw together where it gives you the total ammo versus the current ammo. Weapon pickup turns this to 128. I have, oh, run away. Oh, he explodes. Okay, and he deals damage, and then slowly my health will tick back up. Now, we can't see it, but if I pause and find my player real quick, there he is. Okay. If I zoom out, you can see that is my proximity zone for when I'm regenerating health. If I click on this guy, he should have a volume in which he is aware. So if I get to about here, he should turn and face me. So let's see. There he is. All right. So turns a little too quickly. Oop. Oop. He still sees me, but oh, I'm out of ammo. Okay. There we go. I don't have tracer fire yet. He's dead. Okay. I have switches. That does something. Look, this is on now. That was not there a second ago. Let's see. Toss a couple grenades. He's out of here. Toss a grenade at them. It usually kills them both. Okay. I have my grav pad. Still works. The camera is dynamic and reacts to you zooming, or to sprinting rather. Okay. Let's reload. Forgetting to reload is going to be the death of me at some point. Actually, it's the death of me pretty often, for being honest. Okay, I got one. Those guys are dead. So I have gameplay. It's there like last night in particular. There are times where I was just having fun and I was I'm out of ammo again. That 2-second reload is maybe a little bit too long. He's gone. Okay. And you can see that there's no arrows being thrown down there. We should have 2 rings going off over there. Yep, 2 rings. I got to build a couple more weapons. I think I want to do a shotgun. Whoa, no! They're pretty vicious. We're not going to risk that either. Let's see. There we go. Got him. So these guys are still using a kind of kludgy system that I threw together. I have to fix it. I'm not happy with it right now. All right, 3 rings on. That's my win condition. It's one of the ways that I'm running it from the game manager. But basically, I have win condition composed scripts, which turn on this neat little particle effect. Pause menu still works, and if you jump in, you win. So we have a win condition as well. If I die, it's just this screen basically, but red, and it says you died. And then it gives you the same option. So I kept it pretty simple. So that is the game project right now. There's still something to be said for game feel. It's a little bit floaty. It can be a little bit hard to tell exactly where you are, and I want to turn projectiles on. Right now, I'm only attacking with raycasting, but because of the way that I rebuilt the state machine, should be able to just change that over to a different attack pattern that has a projectile. So yeah, if I go into let's go back into the state machine real quick. So basically, I've prefabbed enemies. My nemesis in Unity is basically it's my ally unit, but less friendly. And we have our character sheet, and then we have I'm using Unity events to do different things when certain events happen, but I have my character state machine too. So in this case, I've got these states. They're just character states, and I've been trying to document my progress as I go. So this state machine is designed to be generic for enemies and allies. I'm using layers now to simplify raycasting, and so I have an idle state, alert state, pursuing state, attacking state. Haven't implemented a retreat state yet. And I have a death state, which basically is just the absolute be-all, end-all. And then they all have a forward sensor, which will eventually be attached to their heads. But that's the source of raycasting. And I have a friendly fire tolerance as well. So this guy can only tolerate 5 hits before every subsequent hit has a 1 in 5 chance to turn him against the source of damage, which has to match his tag. So if he is tagged as an enemy, he takes 5 hits from an enemy, then every one is a 1d5 roll, and if he rolls above the threshold there, he's likely to attack. So it's actually a 4 in 5 chance at point 2. Scan range is how far he is going to raycast to look for things. Target tag is player, so he's going to look for anything that's player based. I'm going to remove this system though, and I'm going to start only using the layer mask for the layers, because this does make it hard for when I've got different tags. Something I learned about yesterday. And then I've just got some different states. These will eventually be no longer exposed in the editor. I just, at the moment, I want to double check them as I go. Total health, character type is based on, it's an enum of these 3, but this is how I check to see whether or not it's a friendly fire thing. Nothing happens on health change because he doesn't have his own little UI yet, although I do have a world space UI set up now. I just haven't implemented it. And then what happens when he dies, it kills the state machine, and then what happens when he responds to new damage, that is the function that checks to see whether or not it's a friendly fire based event. If it's not friendly fire, then it just takes damage and immediately sets the target based on this. So even if it's not an allied unit, it's still a 1 in 5 chance that it will change its attention, and that prevents it from just snapping back and forth, constantly responding to incoming damage. So I can tune that. So maybe some enemies are like really jerky and will immediately switch to whatever the new source of damage is, whereas others are really focused. That, in terms of game feel, does feel better. So, all right, and then we've got our base inventory. This is probably a system I'm going to adopt for the player at some point too. But you can see he doesn't have a melee weapon, which means that it runs the script. It just skips this entirely, and it tries to execute firing with a ranged weapon. And they don't have grenades. But this works for any of the systems, so I've experimented with allied units. They have different weapons. It works fine. And then I just have the individual states. So for the character idle state, it's scanning for anything on the ally's layer mask, which is the player and the other black dogs. And then pursuing script does the same basic thing. It's scanning on that layer mask for a max target distance of 30. I'm looking at the pursuit state. Whoops. The alert state. There it is. Yeah, same thing. So it's scanning for... that's a little weird. Maybe that's set the wrong way. This is why I want to remove this system, though, because it's a little bit confusing to me. If it's confusing to me, it would be confusing to another designer. But basically, it stays alert for 10 seconds, and it scans once every 10 seconds using its... Where are you? It doesn't have a proximity sensor. That's weird. I wonder how I'm doing it. That could be. Oh, you know what? That could just be a straight up issue with this particular character build. Let me see if I look at my new cube beast. Do you have one? No, he doesn't have one either. Okay, well that explains some of the weird behavior. Um, yeah, that's funny. Is it? Oh, you know what? Maybe it's no. It's right there. Okay, it's calling out to this. All right, I bet you if I pop this open, yeah, it's there. Okay, huh? Yeah, I need to remove that extra layer tag thing. It's confusing to me. I built that because I didn't know better at the time, but it's because it's modular. It really shouldn't be an issue to remove it now that I'm aware that it's an issue. Once in a while, they'll get weird and just get hung up, and that's something I gotta sort out. So yeah. Anyway, the proximity sensor works, the grenades work, the guns work, and the state machine is pretty stable. Other than once in a while, things get hung up that I haven't totally chased down. So again, and it's shared between them. So if I look, this guy's using the same state machine, and what I don't have at the moment, just because I haven't written them, is these are all just character states that implement the iState interface. So technically, any of them could be plugged in. Whatever the idle state is what the other ones will call to when it's time to chill. So I could, in theory, keep one on an idle state that is just permanently in an alert state. Whereas the idle state, he just kind of like hangs out and chills. The difference would be animating them. So the alert state might set a new destination and move to it kind of erratically. It might look around. It might have a different animation that's more aggressive. Whereas the idle state is just chilling and it's not scanning as often. And then death state is basically it's just a repository. It shuts everything down and then ensures that it can't switch back out of the state because, let me just pop it open. It's not very long as far as things go. It looks kind of ugly because I've documented a lot, but the state machine totally is only 140 lines. I have a kill character, which sets the death state if it's alive. So if it's not alive, then this won't work anymore. But when you enter the death state, the first thing that it does is it figures out the agent, stops the agent, resets the path. That way, the character controller stops moving, and then it starts a coroutine, which is fade to death, and it sets the death flag to true. And the fade to death doesn't really work right. Basically, it just tries to get it to fade. I haven't seemed to been able to get the material to work the right way. But the death flag sets death flag to true, and so at that point, you can't call to kill the character anymore. It basically just shuts down, and that works really well in terms of shutting the characters down. I have not had any of the hiccups that I had before in an older version of this type of project where the enemies were kind of like periodically jerking back to life. This death state seems to have permanently locked them down. And I attribute that to just more experience with building them. So it's not perfect, but it is much more extensible. It was much easier for me to generate the states stably. So once I got that first one working and I had the pattern down, pursuing, alert, and death came together much more quickly. And then the attacking state is probably where I spent the most work because I had to get the inventory system to work with the attack, and that makes everything more modular. So I could have a character that pursues and never attacks if it doesn't have an inventory. It's null safe. That works pretty well, and I'm pretty happy with it. I haven't figured out melee stuff, but I kind of feel like I might not be able to figure out melee until I've got some animation so I can figure out timing. So that's going to be for a different phase of whatever project or development that I'm working. And then the game manager is very simple. I just have the event system and a single game manager script. The win condition here is generic. This is just one that I built. But what I would do is I would have a win condition base class, abstract class, and then this might be like a switch-based win versus a kill-based win versus a time-based win, and then any of these would run, and I can just compose the game manager on the level that you're playing, and it would just figure out what you need to do that way. So I have a vertical slice of a game at this point that I have built. I think it's fun to play. I realize there are limitations to it, but what I wanted is basically now all here on this little playground. Enemies that are buried in the ground, I don't know why they're down there. I've got enemies that pursue you. I've got enemies that shoot. I've got ammo pickups. I've got regenerating health. I've got a fun twin stick controller that works pretty well, at least on the mouse, because I still can't test it on a game controller. I've got a win condition. I've got an environmental interaction using a very simple system that's reliable. I've got nice class or state templates for building new behavior states. I'm pretty happy with this. I don't totally know what my next step is, other than building the armor powers, just to test out to see if I can do that. But I think I kind of feel like at this stage I might have to just start building a level, like a real level to play through, and then run it by other people and see what they think about it. That's kind of my thought process. So figure out if the game feels good enough to other people, and then maybe then it's time to start playing with animations or something. So that's it. It's kind of a long update for the software stuff. So I'm going to quickly run through how I use code at work. Without getting into the nitty gritty, I wrote JavaScript for the first time to build an applet that makes quarterly reporting for my staff members way, way easier. We use an archaic system for quarterly reporting on student progress. It's a state document, but also it's a parent document, so it needs to be parent friendly, and it needs to be very, very reliable. No errors, no typos, no misspelling the kids' names, no pronoun issues. It really does require us to be very, very circumspect. But when you have as many people as we do filling the reports out, and it's really not the top priority for everybody, which makes sense, what ends up happening is that they spend a long time trying to iron out the issues, but there are usually a lot of complications because we're drawing data from many different sources, sometimes different people, and the system doesn't allow you to see everything all at once. So you have to go through individually, bit by bit, with each kid. And once you start the process, unless you have everything worked out in a big Word document, you cannot go back, and it's time locked. So it's stressful, and it's frustrating, and it's time intensive. And I've been using this system for years, and I've hated it the whole time. I understand the value, but the user interface is just not friendly. So I got to thinking, can I turn this into a spreadsheet based script that you put in student records on each row so you can see everybody to make sure everything's aligned the right way, and then rip those records out into a template that it spits out. And of course, Google Sheets doesn't allow me to use C# for that, and I don't even have the .NET IDE or anything like that SDK installed at work. Where I code at work, it's usually when I code for work-based projects like counters and timers and things like that, it's usually on my own software, my own hardware. But I wanted something that was applicable to all the teachers that they didn't have to install. So I wrote it in Google Sheets, which is what we use as an organization, and that required me to use JavaScript, which was comprehensible from the get-go. So when I loaded up a template version of ripping a CSV for data, I looked at it and I was like, oh, I know exactly what you're doing. Some of the syntax was a little bit goofy, but I figured it out pretty quickly. So what I did is I kept Gemini off on the side, and I would ask it questions that were JavaScript specific, like how would I call for this function, or what is the mechanism for this function, and then I would have it review where things weren't working the way that I thought that they would, because I don't know JavaScript. I've never studied it at all. But instead of vibe coding and having it build it for me, I would build and then I would have it review it, and then ask me questions or point me in the right direction for syntax specific quirks, and that worked really well. So it took about 3-4 hours to put it together. The result is that any teacher who has access to this it's nestled in a folder that has their ID tied to it. So when that teacher runs a report, it spits out individualized reports to their folder so that we don't have any weird crossover that could mess with people. And they can see on their sheet student name, student gender, student grade, student class, then the different data points, and then any comments, questions, concerns that they have that they feel that they need to leave on the report. And then you run the whole thing, and it exports an individualized .txt file for each kid that they can go through, and they can say, hey, as long as I got the name and the gender right, that's taken care of, and they can see it on the spreadsheet. As long as I got the grade right, the time of year right, and the class right on the spreadsheet, it's adjusting the weights and anchors for the kids' data profiles all individually. And if I have to adjust it, next year or 2 years down the road when we have new benchmark data, then all I have to do is change one table for everybody. And then any new reports are automatically reconfigured at that point to reflect the new data. So configurable, it's pseudo centralized in that the reference table is centralized, but the individual reporter instances are specific to that teacher, so everything is nice and modular and self-contained. Very easy for me to debug. Writing JavaScript was a little bit goofy. It's basically a mono class, but for 100, maybe not even 100, maybe 80 lines of code total to get it to do all of this, it just seemed weird to go above and beyond with multiple classes, especially given that I don't know JavaScript. I just know enough programming at this point to pick up the language and build something that can run on the spreadsheet backend. So that was cool. It was nice to see for the first time in like a year and a half something that I coded getting used by other people to make their jobs easier. Because that was one of the huge motivators for me getting started coding. Last January, 2 Januaries ago at this point. That was one of the big reasons that I started, was seeing the need for better bespoke tools for some of what we do, which is really data intensive but draws from many different sources. So instead of spending 2-3 hours every quarter for each teacher, so multiply this times almost 10 people, 20 to 30 man hours, customizing paragraphs and editing and revising. Instead, you just take your class rosters, plug them in, get the pronouns so that we get personal and possessive pronouns correct. Grade and class is all the same, right? And then you go through, you input the kids' individualized data, which we already have in nice teacher-friendly sources. So you just go doot, fill it in, and then you plug in your class goals, stuff like that, student reflections, questions, concerns, and then you hit export, and you get an individualized report for each kid that's a .txt, so you can still pause, you can add more stuff to it, you can revise it. If you notice an issue, you can fix it there. But it basically contracts the writing and reporting phase from 2 to 3 hours per person down to about a half an hour. So that's a huge time saving, and I'm pretty happy with that. I'm pretty happy that people are using it and they're not being weirded out by the fact that, you got to go into the extensions menu, you got to find the script, you got to run the script. It's a little bit aloof maybe, but it works, and I'm pretty happy that I was able to use my practice skills to build something that was useful to my colleagues. So that's it. A little bit of a long update, but game's going well. JavaScript is weird, and I'm on break, so I'm going to figure out what I want to work on next with this game project and see how far we can push this one. So, all right, with that said, I'm Coach T. I'll see you next week.